Alrighty, welcome back to Shut Up and Ball. I am Aaron Chow, accompanied by Mr. John Harris as always, and we are back to share our Week 17 picks against the spread and our locks. So I'll dive right into that in just a moment. But first, let me update the rankings going into this week. So last week, John went 7-9. I went 8-8. So we are tied going into week 17. So these last 2 weeks, and probably, we'll still do the playoffs, but they're much lesser games in the playoffs. So it may be harder to make ground there. So these next 2 weeks definitely will be the decider for John and myself. I forgot who won the previous years. I'll probably go. I still have the spreadsheets. I
believe you did the first year and I won the second year. So we're just tied in literally everything.
Sounds about right. And anyhow, so yes, before we do so, if you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, subscribe. We were about over just a few over 600 subscribers. So we're getting closer to 700. And then hopefully we can hit that 1K goal. And then also, if you're just listening to us on one of our podcast mediums, rate, review, and such. But anyhow, let's get into the Week 17 spreads. Going to start right off in your game, John. Although this game has already lost a little bit of luster because Tennessee we were just talking about this right before we started. No Derrick Henry, obviously no Tannehill, but also they've already ruled out, you said, Jeffrey Simmons as well. So because this game doesn't matter for them for their division title, next week against Jacksonville is the decider there. So understandable by them resting people. And obviously the line influences that because your Cowboys are favored by 11.5 going to Tennessee. So granted, this was neutral field. Dallas, it would be a 14.5 point spread. So yeah, definitely spread indicative of that. I just wanted to add, it's funny because I remember the Thursday night ads. Dak Prescott and the Cowboys versus King Henry and Titans, and they're like, man, great. So now Derrick Henry's not playing. Who do we put in to fill in that ad spot? Anyhow, you rolling with your Cowboys to cover here, John, or you think the Titans and Malik Willis can keep it close?
I'm gonna go with the Cowboys. All year outside of last week have been picking against Dallas. So this is now 2 weeks in a row that I've picked the Cowboys. They won and covered for me last week. So maybe they can do it again. But ultimately, pod curse aside, I know the spread is big at 11.5. Without Derrick Henry, I'm just not sure how much they can score the ball. We've only seen Malik Willis start twice in both of those games. It was against the Houston Texans, and in both of those games, they failed to eclipse, I think, 17 points was the most they scored. And that was the first time they played, and that required Derrick Henry to go for 200 yards. Derrick Henry's not going to play, so you're getting, I can't remember the backup. He's a rookie they drafted this year out of Michigan, I think. Hassan something. Regardless, he's going to be starting. You got a rookie quarterback. You don't have Jeffrey Simmons. You could even this is Wednesday that we're recording, so obviously the game's played on Thursday. We could see even more notable names like Kevin Byard, maybe some offensive linemen, Robert Woods, some other key pieces potentially missing this game because, like you said, it really doesn't matter. They just want to stay healthy for next week when they play Jacksonville. So I'm going to take Dallas, despite how big the spread is, because I think the Cowboys, they actually have motivation to win, especially considering it's a Thursday game. So if Philly, had played before them and won, then they had clinched the division. But considering they played before Philly, you got to go out there, get a dub. And if Philly does lose, put yourself in position to potentially try and steal the division title. So I think Cowboys got motivation. The Titans don't. Cowboys are going to win, and I'm taking them.
Yep, I'm also taking Cowboys. Very same reasons. Like you already noted, no Derrick Henry. No real chance for this Tennessee offense, I believe, to even cover. And even if Dallas lets their foot off the gas after a half, like Cooper Rush ain't bad. And yeah, Dallas obviously needs this win still. So I expect them to take care of business on Thursday night, as well as you, to cover that spread too. So we are anticipating a not very good game on Thursday night. Now we go. Let me make sure these games aren't Saturday. No, all the games are on Sunday. Okay, all the rest of the games are on Sunday. So first, we're going to start off in Atlanta, where the Falcons are favored by 3.5, hosting the Arizona Cardinals. Could have Colt McCoy back for the Cardinals. For the Falcons, another Desmond Ridder week. Not both teams eliminated from playoff contention, so purely just pride here, I guess you can say, is on the line. Who are you going with here in the Battle of the Birds, John?
I'm going to go with Carolina. I feel like with both teams, or sorry, not Carolina. I don't know why I say Carolina. Arizona. Going to Arizona. I feel like with both teams here, I don't feel that confident in either of their ability to move the ball, especially with the quarterback situations. But I like Colt McCoy a little bit more than Desmond Ridder as of right now. Desmond Ridder did have an encouraging performance last week, but I still just think they're going to be very run heavy. And same with Arizona. I think they're also going to be a lot more run heavy with James Conner. And in that kind of scenario, which quarterback do I think can make that little bit of a difference in a run-heavy game? I think it'd be Colt McCoy on his 20, 25 opportunities, especially with guys like DeAndre Hopkins and Hollywood Brown on the outside. So I'm going to take the Cardinals to cover. And I think, honestly, I'm expecting them to win this game. But even if they lose, still got the 3.5 points that they can cover with.
I don't have much else to add. Yeah, it's just one of those where we're glad to kind of have the spread because, I think it was being ugly. Won't be shocked if it's like Arizona's Monday night game. I'm thinking that, right? Or not Monday, but I think it's Christmas or 16-13. You know what I mean? Just an ugly field goal fest type game, and they just pull it out at the end because Colt McCoy, like you said, make more plays, have more playmakers in D-Hop, Hollywood Brown, Greg Dortch, and I think just a factor, too, of, I think we saw a little bit last week, even though they were eliminated, is Cliff Kingsbury probably coaching for his job at this point. So probably trying to tie together a few good performances.
If he wants it, by the way. There's been some recent rumors that he might just quit.
Well, so hey, but maybe he's just building the resume for the next place. Who knows? Right. But yeah, I hear you. Yeah, who knows what's going to go on with Arizona? So, and that could also be a bad thing. Who knows? But for now, like you said, mentioned, I'll stick with the close game. I don't foresee a blowout, so give me the points and Arizona as well. So now we go to my division, going to Detroit, where the Lions, they're on that hot streak, lost last week to the Panthers, so that cooled them down a bit. But their playoff fate still lies in their hands. They are at home, favored by 5.5, hosting the Chicago Bears and Justin Fields. John, how do you see this one playing out? Do you think the Bears can cover?
Yeah, I think they can. The last time they played, this game was really close. But that being said, this time there's a little bit more on the line because the Chicago Bears, if they lose, there's more of a likelihood that they can potentially get the number 1 overall pick. Which, if you're a Bears fan, I know you want to win some games, and it doesn't matter that much because you don't need a quarterback. But man, could you imagine the haul that your team could get if you had number 1 and a team that does want a quarterback would trade up? So I do think Chicago has reason to lose. But that said, I don't think they're going to try to lose. I think they will try to win. Detroit also has a lot of motivation here because they do want to try and make the playoffs. And I do think Detroit will win, but I think it's going to be more of like a field goal game because I just don't believe in Detroit's defense. Also, the run game has been struggling recently. Jamal Williams is supposed to practice this week. I know that he was potentially dealing with some injuries, so he should play. But regardless, I think it's going to be a close one. So I'm going to take Chicago.
Yeah, I expect the Lions to bounce back. I actually think that they will cover that point spread, especially at home. You mentioned, though, Detroit run defense. We saw got gashed last week by Carolina, so that is a little bit scary. But we've seen this team. I feel like we mentioned it in a few weeks prior. They made adjustments then, and I feel like they could probably make some adjustments so they won't get at least gashed as badly as they did last week. Because there were some wide open holes, like we mentioned last podcast. And for the Detroit offense, it's still been pretty good out of Jared Goff. It's just, last few weeks, they had a fumble. He fumbled, I think, near the red zone or in it last week. So that didn't help, and that sparked Carolina drive and kind of killed their momentum. And hopefully they get Jamal Williams back, like you mentioned, because I think he is key to the little 1-2 punch of him and Swift. And he just, like Swift, he kind of do everything in the run and pass game for them. Another week maybe they get Jameson Williams a little more involved. They've been kind of throwing him in. I know it's they're being careful because he's coming off that ACL tear, but a lot of contributing factors there. And Chicago's defense, I have zero faith in. We saw the Bills run them freely last week, and they're not nearly as talented or well coached or well versed of a run team as Detroit. So I'm going with the Lions to cover. John believes Chicago will at least keep it close. So one difference already right there. And remember, we came into this week tied. So every one of these games will be important. However, this next one, not really important to either of these teams also, which is kind of ironic, which is the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are favored by 7.5 going to the Houston Texans. Like we mentioned, Jacksonville, doesn't matter what happens this week for them or Tennessee. So they can drop this game and they still control their fate to win the division and get in the playoffs. So yeah, who knows if they'll be resting or limiting guys. But they are favored by 7.5, John, at Houston. You think that Jacksonville can cover, or you think Houston will keep it close coming off their second win of the season?
I'm going to go with Houston here. I worry that Jacksonville might rest players because, like we said, this game doesn't matter, especially if they see that Tennessee lost, which, once again, doesn't really matter that much. But I don't know, it might incentivize them more so that, like, hey, let's just rest. Plus, you see, if Tennessee rests a lot of people, you might be like, okay, well, we don't want them to have this advantage over us, so we're going to do it. I don't know. I'm worried that like Trevor Lawrence might not play, ETN, some of these key players for them might not participate in this game. So I'm going to take Houston. The reason that I did bring up the Chicago potential, losing, getting the number one pick thing is because of this game specifically, is that if Jacksonville does rest a bunch of players, doesn't really care, loses the game, Houston wins. I don't know what the situation would be if Chicago was to lose, because Houston, they have 2 wins, right? Chicago has 3. Does Houston have a tie? Yeah, they do have a tie. Chicago does not. So if Houston was to win this game and Chicago lost, Chicago would claim the number 1 overall pick. So I don't know. Well, this is just a very weird game for me to pick. So I'm just taking Houston in the points because I have no clue which way to go. So I'm just going to take the underdog and hope that it works out. Because Houston might have extra incentive to ensure that they don't lose this number 1 pick, where Jacksonville doesn't really care. So I have no clue what happens here.
Yeah, that's a great assessment because I don't know. I feel like maybe Jacksonville may just get ahead to the lead, and then kind of sit on the ball, pull guys, kind of like a little bit preseason stuff. Especially it helps that Tennessee plays a couple of days before them, so they get to see what they did or see, kind of get a feel for the playoff picture. But yeah, I mean, if this would be interesting that this is a difference for us, because yeah, it's just this game is very tough to feel. If you're betting this game, like, good luck to you, because I don't know what to like. What do you bet? Like, do you bet like this is one I would avoid. Definitely not going to be a lock for me. I don't know about you, but definitely not be a lock for me in terms of Jacksonville. But yeah, I'm going Jacksonville. I'm hoping, it's more hoping than thinking. I'm hoping that they cover, and John's going Houston to keep it close at least. And who knows, maybe they win as well. But got another big spread coming up here, and that is with the Kansas City Chiefs at Kansas City, favored by 12.5, hosting the Denver Broncos. Daniel Hackett gone for them. I'm already forgetting their interim head coach's name. Apologies to them. I believe it's Russell Wilson still going to be starting this week, although he was already pulled last week for Brett Rypien. Anyway, John, basically, do you think Denver can keep it close, or do you think Kansas City covers here against the Broncos?
I'm going to take Kansas City. Their interim head coach, by the way, was Jerry Rosburg, who was ironically the guy that Hackett hired earlier in the year to help him make 4th down decisions and all that kind of stuff, and clock management things, because early in the year that was kind of a big deal. Anyway, I'm going to go with Kansas City here with Rosburg. I don't know. Usually an interim head coach has kind of been on the coaching staff for at least the whole season, maybe even longer. I don't know, Rosburg, he also doesn't feel like he's been someone that's been super involved in like the actual coaching of the team, considering he was just there to help with decision making. And so I'm not sure how well he knows the team, how he knows the players. I'm also just kind of unfamiliar with him, so I don't know his extensive background. I think he came from Baltimore, where he was last. Regardless, taking the Chiefs. This was a close game last time. This time they're in Kansas City. And, with Nathaniel Hackett gone, I think that there could just potentially be this feeling in Denver of, all right, season's over. Like, coach got fired. Like who cares? Not that there was any intense motivation because they weren't going to the playoffs anyway. But I feel like just that kind of move just feels like a big statement, to the organization. It might just send the message that the season's done. And for Kansas City, meanwhile, they're still fighting for the potential bye week in the first round of the playoffs with Buffalo. So I think they're going to come out motivated, and I think they're going to handle the business. So I'm going to take the Chiefs.
I think Chiefs will win, but I think Denver keeps it close. I feel like maybe I'm just scared of the new interim head coach energy. Sometimes, that could at least get a team to play a little bit better. And 12.5 is a lot of points. Especially in regards to Kansas City. I know last week they covered, but they've kind of, I don't want to say toned it down a bit, but they've kind of gone back to Chiefs like last year and a couple of years ago. They do this type of thing where they have just one really good quarter where they score, like 17, 20 points, and the rest of the game is just kind of, they'll probably get like 3 or 6. Kind of just sleepwalk through the rest of the game because they're Kansas City and they can turn on any moment. So I just feel like Kansas City get up early, and then Denver maybe scores a garbage time touchdown. But I mean, after last week, I just don't think it'll be bad as last week. Where they threw 4 interceptions. It was just last week was a debacle, which obviously led to Nathaniel Hackett's firing. So I feel like they may be a little more conservative with their play calling, and hopefully their defense can limit Kansas City, because last time it was actually their offense. You mentioned last game, their offense that kept them in the game, and the defense had trouble getting stops against the Chiefs offense. So we'll see if maybe the Denver defense can get back to the dominant ways that they had early in the season, or if Kansas City can cover here. Regardless, third difference for John and myself. So we'll see who will decide that one. Another divisional matchup. We'll probably get a lot of these once again these last 2 weeks. We're going to the AFC East, going to Foxborough, where the New England Patriots are at home, favored by 2.5, hosting the Miami Dolphins. I forget. I apologize. Did they already rule out Tua? I know that he's in concussion protocol, so it's not looking great.
They did rule Tua out. It will be Teddy Bridgewater.
So Theodore Bridgewater in for the Miami Dolphins. John, do you think they can cover, or do you think New England can get a crucial win here? Because they also have been on, both teams have been on a losing streak going into this, so something's got to give. In theory, unless they tie.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Miami Dolphins. Even with Teddy Bridgewater back there, I don't really have a ton of faith in New England's offense and their ability to score, although Miami's defense does have a lot of injuries in the secondary specifically, and that part does kind of worry me. I still just, I don't know, New England's offense doesn't really wow me. And I think that you got Teddy Bridgewater, but you still got to worry about Tyreek Hill. You still got to worry about Jalen Waddle. They still got a lot of playmakers over there. And I think that those guys and their home run ability could be the difference maker here. So I'm going to take Miami. It also helps that they're the underdogs here, so we're getting the points. But I think that Miami's going to win this game because they got 2 games that they got to play. If they can win this one, they should theoretically be in, but it depends what happens with the Jets. But yeah, I'm going to take the Miami Dolphins here.
I also am taking Miami. You hit the main point you already hit, which was not very. I just don't trust New England's offense. Run game has been great recently, and we've gone over the Ramondre Stevenson fumbles last 2 weeks. Although the one 2 weeks ago was intentional lateral, but he could be in the doghouse, and just the run game also just hasn't been going as of recently anyway, and. We've all already seen Mac Jones fizzle frustration with the offense, the passing game especially. And Miami, they are a talented defense, and I hope they're not too aggressive, giving New England free one-on-one opportunities, make things easy. But either way, on the flip side, I expect Teddy Bridgewater, not too much of a drop off. I mean, obviously Tua's better than Teddy, but not too much of a drop off from those two down. Eventually at some point, Tyreek or Jalen Waddle, like we've seen, even if you have a really good defense, it doesn't matter that those guys can probably make a play or two on their own. It's just so tough to contain the both of them at the same time. So we are both going Miami to at least cover, but probably win. although we will see. But anyway, one of those teams hopefully will snap their losing, regardless, should snap their losing streak. So anyhow, now we go to that one, to another exciting game. And this one's in New York, where the Giants are at home. They are favored by 5.5, hosting the Indianapolis Colts. So, John, how do you foresee this one going out? You think the Giants can cover, or you think the Colts can finally get a win number 2 for Jeff Saturday?
I'm going with the Giants. We talked about their playoff scenarios last episode. They're a 91% chance to make it. This is a win and get in scenario. And I don't know. I worry about the Colts, where the offense is going to come from. They're still going to stick with Nick Foles. They don't have Jonathan Taylor, as we've previously talked about. The offensive line has been poor. I just think that Giants team is coached in a way that they're going to get a lot of pressure, because we've seen Wink Martindale will throw a lot of blitzes at you. And I'm not sure about how Nick Foles is going to be able to handle that. And on the other side, although I don't love Daniel Jones, I do think that Daboll can get that offense in a position where they can score about 21 points. And as we saw last week against the Chargers, that was enough. So I think that Saquon and that offense can do enough just to come out here and win and secure their playoff spot. So, yeah, especially considering it's a win and get in scenario, and next week they'd have to play Philadelphia. You don't know what happens in the Philadelphia Saints game. Like, you just don't want to risk anything, because if the Eagles were to lose that game, there is extra motivation for them to come out and beat you. So you don't want to test it. I think the Giants are aware of that. You're going to come out here, handle your business against the Colts.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I'm going to go with the Giants, very much the same reasons. I just want to add to, you mentioned a little bit of playoff desperation. Yeah, like, you can still hold the keys. You still control your own destiny, especially if you win this week. I imagine they're going to take care of business. And for Indianapolis, I mean, we saw Nick Foles last week. I don't imagine he'd throw 3 interceptions again, but I still don't expect it to be amazing. Super Bowl MVP Nick Foles, like, that's long gone. Probably never see that again. And then on the flip side, you already mentioned Giants offense. They find ways to move the ball, whether it be 4 or 5 yards at a time, but they find a way to grind out drives and such. So I'm going with the Giants as well, especially at home, to take care of business. We are in agreement there. Speaking of Philly, that's where we're going next, where the Eagles, they are at home also, favored by 5.5, hosting the New Orleans Saints. Looking like it probably should still be Gardner Minshew for Philly. Regardless, I feel like we both feel like the Philly will win this one. Question is, do we think Philly can cover? John, do you think Philly can cover?
I think they can. I obviously, as a Cowboys fan, I want the Saints to come out here and win this game, but I just still don't have a ton of faith in the talent that they got. I don't have a ton of faith in Dennis Allen. I think he might be coaching for his job, but at the same time, I think it might already be lost. There's rumors of Sean Payton potentially returning. There's rumors of trying to recruit Tom Brady, all this kind of stuff. And so it sounds like the organization is already looking towards the postseason. And so, I don't know. Also with Philadelphia, we saw last week with Gardner Minshew, they're still a very good team. Like, you don't lose it's not like if the Chiefs lost Patrick Mahomes or something, to where, oh my gosh, like, we don't have that great of a defense, and we don't have the greatest of receivers, and we don't have an elite level running back, all this kind of stuff you have to start worrying about. Like the Eagles, they still have an elite offensive line. They still have a really good defense. They still have arguably top 5 tight end. They have arguably the best wide receiver duo in the entire NFL. Like, they have a lot of great pieces over there, and Gardner Minshew can still play. In the last 3 games we've seen him start, he's had over 250 yards every single time. He's had multiple touchdowns every single time. I'm going to take the Philadelphia Eagles to cover, although I'm really hoping I'm wrong on that one.
Yeah, I don't have much else to add. Also, like in recent years, I know the past few times they had Jalen Hurts, but Philly's had New Orleans' number. Usually New Orleans, especially their front 4 on defense, for the most part, really good. We're stopping the run themselves, but with how good Philly's O-line is alone, I know they're missing Lane Johnson, but likely going to move Jordan Mailata to the right tackle, and maybe slot in Andre Dillard, who's a first rounder, who I know hasn't lived up to the expectations, but he's been pretty solid anyhow. So yeah, I foresee Philly, like John mentioned, kind of just moving along here without much trouble. And yeah, New Orleans hasn't been easy on offense. That's another thing too. Although it does scare me a little bit because we mentioned last podcast, Philly's defense can be very simplistic at times, but especially without Sean Payton, though, I'm feeling definitely better. So, and who knows, weather may play into a factor in too. So it may help Philly out more if it's kind of a dredgy game where they can lean on the run game and such. But anyhow, we both go Philly to cover. Now we go to the wonderful NFC South battle here, which is between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at Tampa. They are favored by 2.5, hosting the Carolina Panthers. I apologize if I forget, but I believe we mentioned last pod. Does this decide their division, or at least or is it just like a leg up? I think
it would give Carolina the tiebreaker over Tampa, but they would still be tied. So Carolina would then it would just give Carolina their own destiny. They would then have to beat the Saints the final week. If they dropped that game and Tampa was to win their final game, then Tampa would still make it because they would no longer be tied.
Okay. So anyhow, how are you feeling about this one? Where are you going here?
I'm going to go with Carolina. We talked about the playoff prediction last episode, and I was saying that I think Carolina's actually going to be the team to win this division, and I think that starts here. Obviously, if Tampa does win, it doesn't. I think it actually, it would eliminate them. So I mean, I have to pick them if I think that Carolina's going to, go to the playoffs. So just considering my prediction last episode, I don't really have any leeway, so I'm taking the Panthers.
Yeah, I'm taking the Panthers also. I've seen more consistency out of their offense, in the run game or even a little bit in the passing game. I'm not saying it's an amazing passing game, but they found ways with Sam Darnold to get the ball to DJ Moore. I'll give Sam Darnold that as opposed to, Baker Mayfield, where he will force feed his playmakers and DJ Moore and Terrace Marshall Jr. too, who has been getting more play recently and been doing pretty well as well. Then on the flip side, like we mentioned previously, once again, like Tampa Bay's offense, it hasn't been great, it hasn't been consistent. It just feels like, they just kind of sputter their way to field goals at a time. And then, yes, at the end, Tom Brady, a few clutch drives to get them in field goal position. I just don't think that'll happen here with Carolina. Their defense too, more of a speed predicated defense. And you mentioned Leonard Fournette possibly having an injury last week, getting injured. So who knows if he'll even play, and that doesn't help, the Bucs run game that hasn't even been great, but I don't even say good, probably definitely below average. So you take him out, that doesn't help things at all, obviously. So yeah, I'm going with Carolina here, but watch Tom Brady and this Bucs team somehow come alive. But I guess we'll both be wrong, at least together, if so. Anyway, now we go over to Washington, where the Commanders, they are at home, favored by 1.5, hosting the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, Washington's still in the playoff race, like we mentioned last pod. Cleveland eliminated. So, John, do you think Washington can keep control and win this game for their playoff race?
Yeah, I think they can. Cleveland, I wanted to pick them, but the more I thought about it, which, by the way, Washington, they're going with Carson Wentz. I didn't hear if you mentioned that. But I don't know. Cleveland, you can run on them. We know that Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson, they can be a focal point of this offense. Also, the fact that they are doing a QB switch makes me think they might be a little more run heavy, just so, Carson Wentz can maybe get his legs under him. And I don't know. I think overall Washington is just kind of the better team.
Yeah, I think I mentioned a little bit when we talked about their playoff scenarios, but especially this matchup, I think it works well for Washington. Cleveland, I've mentioned almost anyone can run on Cleveland outside of like really Myles Garrett. The rest of their defensive line and front seven is relatively undersized. And on the flip side, we've seen Washington, especially their run defense, come together, to be really stout. And, especially in recent weeks, Cleveland's run offense hasn't been amazing. And Deshaun Watson's still struggling. to get his footing and then coming back to the NFL. So, yeah, I just think Washington takes care of business and wins this one. And I'm expecting Carson Wentz to take care of the ball and hopefully not put them behind the 8 ball, but we'll have to wait and see for that. So John and I both going Washington. We'll see if Carson Wentz can get some redemption or, make the most of his second chance here in Washington. Anyway, now we go over to San Francisco, or not to San Francisco, to the West Coast, where the Niners are favored by 10.5 going to Las Vegas, where the Raiders will host them. No Derek Carr, as we've learned today. It will be Jared Stidham. So that's probably why the line is 10.5. Regardless, John, who are you going with here? Basically, do you think the Niners can cover against Jared Stidham and the Raiders?
I'm going with San Francisco. I personally just do not agree with benching Derek Carr. I know that he had a bad performance last week, but I just don't agree with it. I still think that he is a top 15, 16-ish quarterback. Like, I think he's not top 10, but he's in that 11 to 16 range for me. And personally, I'd put him on a little bit of the higher end, like maybe 13, 12-ish, around there. Regardless, I still think he's a good quarterback, and I don't think that Jarrett Stidham is. Jarrett Stidham, and I am a little biased here because I went to Baylor. The guy did go there. He was not very good and then transferred away. But I was never impressed with him in college. I was never super impressed with any of the limited action that he ever saw in New England. And I think the only reason that he's actually in Las Vegas is because of the familiarity with Josh McDaniels. But overall, I'm not expecting this to be, some situation where he comes in there and he lights it up. Also, the Raiders are eliminated from the playoffs. The Niners are still technically fighting and could potentially get the first round bye. So I'm going to take San Francisco, despite the fact that they're on the road, because I'm not a Stidham believer. And with the state of that offensive line going against Nick Bosa and those guys, it could get ugly.
Yeah. When I initially heard of the benching, and I forgot whose report I read, it just felt like, to me, I was like, okay, maybe they're just saving Derek Carr, don't want him to get hurt and just, no point of playing out the rest of the season. Just save your guy. But apparently, and who knows if, because sometimes these reports aren't really true, but those reports that they're trying to save him for a trade and such, which, yeah, I'm with you. I just don't think that's really fair to Derek Carr because, once again, like I mentioned last podcast, another coaching change over the past couple of years, gone through multiple, if you count, the Gruden exodus. And I mean, yeah, you mentioned offensive line not great and new system. So
also, what the heck would happen to Devontae Adams if you get rid of him? Like, that's the reason he came
part
there.
Of the reason why Devontae. So that's why I'm like, I'm not sure if that's the reason why, but we're not in there. We don't know. All we can do is speculate from the outside. Anyhow, in regards to the game itself, yeah, I'm with you. Jared Stidham at best is a backup, and I think that's really pushing it. So, yeah, I expect San Fran to win and cover here convincingly as they try to, at least stay right on the Eagles and everyone else's heels for maybe a better seeding or potentially that one seed if the sky falls down for the Eagles and everything lines up for the Niners. Anyhow, let's blow past that one. Now we go to a very interesting one between two teams that have struggled in recent weeks and need to keep their playoff hopes alive, and that is the New York Jets. They are favored by 1.5 going to Seattle. A little bit of a Geno Smith revenge game here against the team that drafted him and threw him aside. Anyhow, John, and especially also, Mike White to be starting for the Jets too. So where are you going with here, John? You going with the Jets or going with Geno and the Seahawks?
I'm going to go with the Jets. I don't know, this game, based on the spread, 1.5, it feels like a true toss-up. I'm not really sure who's better. My biggest concern is no Tyler Lockett, and Sauce Gardner is completely locked down, and I think he matches up very well with DK Metcalf. And so we saw last week, outside of DK, there was almost no production in the receiving game from other receivers. It was your tight ends. It was running backs. I just think that could get pretty one-dimensional, especially against the Jets defense that's pretty solid. Also, the Jets are still fighting for the playoff lives. I know Seattle is too, so both teams got that motivation. But I don't like the matchup in terms of the Seahawks offense and the stuff that they got going against New York. So I'm going to take the Jets.
more of a gut feeling for me. I'm going with the Seahawks. I think especially, he struggled a little bit recently. I just feel like, especially going up against a team that drafted him and it all fell kind of apart with. I just feel like Geno's gonna, come with this game with a little extra motivation, and maybe the rest of the team too. The no Tyler Lockett does scare me. I'm hoping that they can get Kenneth Walker more involved and get him going in the run game. And on the flip side, I'm anticipating that Seattle will find ways to slow down Mike White in the offense, slow down those playmakers, all the easy passes that they get, so that they can get their playmakers like Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore. I anticipate Seattle will hopefully find ways to slow them down, but that is scary for me as well. But I'm hoping that, home field advantage, stuff like that, I'm just kind of factoring that into my decision. Not amazing analysis, I know, but I mean, as we've shown, we've been kind of right in our analysis at times, but then dead wrong in the result. It just falls apart. So I'm going with the gut here, and we'll see if that fails me in the end. But John and I with another difference. John going with the Jets. I'm going with the Seahawks. So there is a fourth difference for John and myself. Now we go to my game, which is at Lambeau, where my Green Bay Packers, are favored by 3.5, hosting the Minnesota Vikings. Packers pretty much need to win this one to hope to still keep their playoff hopes alive, while Minnesota still has motivation as well, especially if the Eagles dropped that game earlier. Anyhow, John, how do you see this one playing out? Do you think Green Bay can win and cover, or do you think Minnesota silences our hopes?
I'm not saying that Minnesota's going to lose. I'm not saying that Green Bay's going to the playoffs. I'm just saying I'm wondering what the line would be if this two teams play in the first round of the playoffs. I'm taking the Green Bay Packers. I think the hard one was last week against the Dolphins. That was the game. And I think when they won that game, that's a very, very big confidence booster. Sure, whatever. They've lost 3 straight before you played them, but they're still a good team. They still have a lot of scary weapons. If you could weather the Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill storm, I don't think that you're too worried about getting destroyed by Justin Jefferson because, yeah, he's going to do it, but you still showed that you were able to win against 2 elite stud receivers last week. And so, I don't know. I just got a feeling that Green Bay is going to come out and they're going to kick some ass. So I'm going to take the Packers.
Yeah, I'm initiating a little bit of pod curse here, but also I just think it will be a close game. Wouldn't shock me if my Packers won. I'm hoping we at least, have some sort of plan for Justin Jefferson, unlike week 1 where we just gave him 10 yards and to work with for them just to play pitch and catch. But yeah, I think that this game will be close. Minnesota has a very good tendency to do that. Division games, you always mention, tend to be that way. You know them very well, the personnel and such. But we'll say Packer offense definitely have more confidence in as opposed to week 1. And we've seen they've started to gel. Double check the status of Christian Watson because obviously, he's the main game breaker. So that could be key. But, we see Romeo Doubs. He's more involved now. I would say the offensive line is definitely more solidified with Elton Jenkins. He's basically, been playing and back to where he was. Bakhtiari's been up in the air. His status, he's been in and out. But, yeah, I expect Green Bay to at least keep it close. But we know Minnesota, they love their one-possession games, and I wouldn't be shocked if Green Bay gives them their first. I think they're undefeated in those one-possession games, I think, go this season. So, regardless, I think it'll be close, so we'll see what happens. But, hopefully Parkhurst goes my way. But now we go to the Battle of L.A. It'll be interesting to see who gets home field, who has more fans in regard here, because it's between the L.A. Chargers at L.A. Chargers, air quotes around at L.A. Chargers, -6.5 hosting the L.A. Rams. I'm sure once again, schedule makers were like, this is a great game. We love this, Herbert, Stafford, and no, they didn't get that. They got Herbert and Baker Mayfield. Anyhow, you think the Rams keep this close, John, or you think the Chargers can cover?
Well, the tough part for me is that the Chargers have already clinched a playoff spot, and I don't know how much their seeding is really affected by this game. And so I'm going to take the Rams to cover just because ultimately I'm not sure how much of the motivation is going to be there for the Chargers. I still think they're going to play. Like, it's not like a Titans-Jaguars situation, but I don't know how motivated they will be to go out there and just dominate a game. Meanwhile, the Rams, they're kind of figuring some stuff out recently. Sean McVay is still an amazing coach, so I think the Rams are going to cover.
Yeah, I expect the Rams also to cover. They've kind of got the run game going recently with Cam Akers. I mentioned last pod, looking like he's finally getting back to fully healthy Cam Akers. And we've mentioned before, Chargers run defense not great. And yeah, I don't expect them to be doing a lot of crazy things, even schematically too, because they could be just playing things close to the vest, be kind of simplistic. Hey, we don't want to show our hand too much so that other teams, could go back at this film and try to, take that away or, log it in for themselves. So yeah, I still think that they'll win this game, but because they kind of found this weird formula of gutting these games, some of these, even the close ones out, even if they don't have a run game. But yeah, I think the Rams keep it close. So I am in agreement with you. Now we go to the Sunday night game, and it is at Baltimore, where the Ravens are favored by 2.5, hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, Baltimore's still fighting for playoff position and still trying to hold on to hopes for the division, while Pittsburgh's still fighting for Mike Tomlin and the 500 record. I'm gonna throw it to you. I'm gonna try to check the stats of Lamar Jackson while I throw it to you, but. How do you think this one goes, and why?
I'm going to take the Steelers. They're the underdog. I really think that although Mike Tomlin probably doesn't care that much about this winning season thing, he is motivated by making the playoffs, and they still have a chance. They do need other things to happen, but I think Mike Tomlin's the kind of guy that, forget about all the other stuff, focus on what you can control. And then obviously the team, they're motivated by the playoffs too. But I do think there's also this aspect of the team knows that stat. They know his winning record. And I think they do want to get that for him because Mike Tomlin, he's one of the most well-respected coaches in the league. He's obviously got the locker room. And I don't know. I think that that's going to be a situation where this team's going to come out extra motivated and try and get this for him. Also, it's a bitter rivalry game. Steelers-Ravens, one of the best rivalries in the NFL, always just ugly games. So even if Lamar does come back and play, he's returning from injury, so things could get a little dicey. I don't know. I'm taking the Steelers just because I think there's a lot of factors that make me lean towards them.
Yeah, I'm also taking Pittsburgh. They found a good formula on offense. Take care of the ball. We'll just slowly matriculate down the field and eat up time. And then that puts more pressure on your offense to make the most of your drives. And then we know they do crazy stuff on defense. And we've kind of seen Cameron Hayward be really good as of recently. And obviously they still have that guy, TJ Watt, as well. And, they just do a lot of good, crazy things. And yeah, it's looking like Lamar not going to play as of Wednesday. Still, he has not practiced. So according to Jonas Schaffer of the Baltimore Sun, it looked like another start on Sunday for Tyler Huntley. And we've already seen this Baltimore passing offense especially really struggle. And I think Pittsburgh can handle their run game as well. So I am going Pittsburgh also. Wouldn't be shocked if Baltimore does win, but even if they do win, although 2.5 is very little in terms of these two ugly defensive teams, I feel like that's the perfect amount. I could easily see a 16-14 type game or something like that. Definitely more so in this one than other games. So now we go to the Monday night game, and this one definitely will. ESPN will be glad that they're getting their money's worth for this one because it is the Buffalo Bills. They are favored by 1.5 going to the Cincinnati Bengals. Bills still need a win to hold on to that one spot in the conference, and the Bengals aren't eliminated from having that chance also. So this could be a huge swing game regardless. John, how do you foresee this one playing out between the Bills and Bengals? You're muted.
Thank you. I'm going with Buffalo. I don't really have any analysis. I don't really have any feel for this game. Both teams are very good. It's, as the spread shows, it's basically a coin flip. Both the teams have the motivation to win because Cincinnati wants to clinch their division. They want to still potentially fight for the first seed. Buffalo wants to get that first seed as well. Ultimately, I don't know. Just kind of a gut feeling taking Buffalo.
All right. Well, I am going Cincinnati. I just think they're a better overall team right now than Buffalo. Their defense, we've mentioned a million times, very underrated. And this Buffalo offense has been sputtering as of late. And we've seen take away Stephon Diggs. It's life's very tough on Josh Allen's gang, not because of Josh Allen, just because there aren't really many other guys he can rely on consistently. And their run game isn't amazing. I know it was good last week against the Bears, but Cincinnati, one of the better run defenses in the league. And I expect that they'll slow that aspect down. And on the flip side, I hope Cincinnati's a little patient with the run, but they may not need to be because we know they have those weapons out there, and T. Higgins and obviously Jamar Chase. So even if you are playing, the right defenses to take certain plays away, or their concepts. I mean, sometimes Joe Burrow, with how good he is too, it doesn't matter. He just he knows where to put the ball for those guys and get them in playmaking opportunities, and it's just so hard to contain both of them. You mentioned wide receiver duo with the Eagles. That's one of the better ones. I mean, this one right here is still really good in Higgins and Chase. So I just worry about Buffalo's offense, which once again I know is surprising, but outside of Josh Allen, because I just feel like Cincinnati is going to contain him in the run game and make life tough in the pass game by taking away Diggs. But we'll have to see. I expect that one to be a very good game on Monday night. We have 6 differences. That's our 6th one. So it would be ironic if that one ends up tying it up, either way for us. But anyhow, those are the picks against the spread for us. Now let's get into our locks. I went first last week. So it is your turn to go first. Just to inform everyone, we did not hit our locks last week. Seattle did not come through for me, and Minnesota did not cover as John wanted them to. Otherwise, John had it right the rest of the way.
Man, this is a tough week.
A lot of big spreads, so that's so scary too.
I'm gonna take Carolina.
Wow.
I am confident in those guys, and Sam Darnold's going to burn me. Watch.
Yeah, this is a very tough week. I don't know who I have faith in. I'm going to get wacky with it. I don't know. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take Dallas. I'll take Dallas.
I thought about it, but the big spread kind of scares me. I am going to take the Niners.
I thought about that one too. That's a pretty good one. All right. I got one more.
You can take more than one.
Well, I'm only doing one more now.
Gotcha.
Playing it close to the vest to end it. I'm going to take Detroit.
All right. I'm taking another one. I'm going with your Green Bay Packers.
Alrighty. Don't be upset at me if, it's a 10-point game and Kirk Cousins throws a garbage time touchdown.
Listen,
that's it.
All I'm saying is before you told me about the pod curse and the fact that every time you picked against Green Bay, they covered, I did notice that every time you picked against them and I picked for them, I was right. And then you told me, I think it's, the pod curse. And then, we developed that from there. But I'm banking on the fact that this scenario happens. I remember last year's Green Bay, San Francisco when it happened. There was a couple games, Green Bay, Philadelphia maybe, where you pick against them. I picked them. It wasn't San Francisco because I think y'all lost that game. Or maybe all the
other
underdogs.
Maybe the regular season game that we won because we lost in the playoffs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You did win the regular season game. So it was that game. Yeah, there's a lot of games where when you pick against them, I picked them
en route to Devontae.
Yeah. So
Devontae.
I'm banking on that.
All right. Well, that's my last. No Devontae this time, so we'll see. But regardless, we'll see. Obviously, I hope Green Bay wins, so it may be a win-win. But regardless, I have 5 on John, so he still has to. Basically, this is a huge week. Like, you have to get this week, and then that even provides more hope for next week.
That's why I'm taking 3, because if I can get 3, then I can play
have to do
safe
2.
a little next week. If I don't get it, then I'm going big, or I'm taking 6 next week if I have
And I
to.
think also what you're rooting for is like there's some clarity in regards to certain positioning. So, like, okay, this team's out, like they're done, or like this team's like maybe the Eagles, I know you don't want this, but it's like, okay, maybe the Eagles won. They took care of business. Okay, they're going to be maybe resting guys. So
Well, I'd actually, in terms of locks, I would prefer that the Eagles lost this week, because then I'd be way more confident they'd smack
that
the
they
crap
win.
out of the Giants. So, and especially if the Giants won this week, then the Eagles need it, the Giants don't. But anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sorry. Yes. Regardless, I know what you mean. So yeah, you're hoping for. Regardless, John's hoping for more clarity, especially if he nails his locks this week. So we'll see if that happens. Once again, to go over our locks before we sign off. I'm going with Dallas. They have to win by 11 or by 12 or more. I'm also going with Detroit. They have to win by 6 or more. For John, he is going with Carolina. All they have to do is win or lose by 2 or less. He's going with San Francisco. They have to win by 11 or more over the Las Vegas Raiders and Jared Stidham. And then lastly, but not leastly, he's going with my Packers to win by 4 or more against the Vikings. So we'll see. And once again, we're tied up in regards to the overall spread record going into this week, and we have 6 differences. So very likely we will be back next week. And guys, we drew. It comes down to week 18. We didn't write this script. It just happens to be that way. But who knows? Maybe one of us just goes 6-0 and just completely ends all hope. Nonetheless, as per usual, I mentioned our YouTube and such. Feel free to hit us up on our socials at Shut Up and Ball Pod on Instagram and at Shut Up and Ball on Twitter and TikTok. And once again, we're on YouTube and Facebook. We do have a Facebook page. Shut Up and Ball are those pages, and you can find us on most free podcast mediums. Anyhow, that'll do it for us. We will see you all next week. Hopefully, my Packers are still alive in the playoff race. And hopefully we're not tied in terms of spreads, but who knows? You can't have it all, everyone. But have a nice night.